It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
In this first one, when we first say it, you're going to think we're being funny, but it's true because there are some statistics behind it. In the first place where we see wealth get absolutely decimated for wealthy individuals is through kids.
Well, and I think you guys count on us to be your tour guides of somebody, not only in our journey of building our own wealth, but we do work on our day job as fee-only financial advisors for successful families and companies. So we have had, through decades of experience, we see this firsthand.
Yep.
And I will tell you, this is a big one. We put this as number one is because, unfortunately, the kids that we love with all of our heart, and there is some type of just amazing thing that happens when you have your first child or you adopt your child, is this unconditional love is a tremendous thing that takes over. You know, and I always tell people that you never know who your friends are going to be the crazy parents are until they have their first kid, because there is something that just happens when you have children that you don't know. Are you going to be a normal good parent? Or are you going to be the crazy, hover parent? But that is, it all goes into this unconditional love. But there can be too much of a good thing that we always try to give some guidance to make sure your kids aren't, pulling you underwater if they start getting in trouble themselves.
And so naturally, when we say kids, all of our minds immediately jump to like young children, right? They are thinking about babies and toddlers and kids in the house. But when we talk about wealth being lost, we're actually talking about 3 different stages of children, 3 different times when we see the wealth transfer or the wealth accumulation really struggle. The first are the early years. We do talk about that, when you do have children in the house. The second is the adult years. Once your kids should be out of the house, they're no longer living with you. They should be out, flown the nest on their own. And then the third is when you age and it's time for you to start having conversations with your kids about finances and about what's going to happen after you are no longer here. The first one is pretty easy. Stage 1, it's the natural parental, it's hardwired in us that we want to take care of these little ones, right? Like they come out and we think we would do anything in the world for them, to protect them, to provide for them, to create opportunity for them. But what often happens is parents get their order of operations all out of whack. And when it comes to their financial foundation, they start thinking, oh man, this kid is here. I got to make sure that they have this, or they can do this, or they experience this, or the college account has this much in it, or I'm doing these things, not recognizing that one of the best gifts we can often give our children is the ability of us not moving into their basement at some point in the future.
Yeah, we give the analogy, and you guys, you've heard us say it a bunch, but it is the flight attendant analogy. When you get on an airplane, they always start off every flight with, hey, make sure if for some reason the oxygen mask drops down, secure yours first before you help out the children next to you. Your finances are very similar, is that you need to make sure you're in a healthy place, because your kids are going to be able to get student loans. They're going to be able to hopefully get scholarships or grants or other things. But you're kind of on your own financially, and that might be a big because I've done the New York Times articles and other things. We've done the screen shares where there is a growing trend of parents having to move into the basement of their adult children, not because it's a thing that we've all chosen because we all want to have this, family lifestyle where we can, live together, raise the children and grandkids together. No, it's because mom and dad are broke. So we're telling you, take care of your retirement savings before you start loading it up for the kids.
Yeah, oftentimes we'll see prospects or new clients come in and they'll be so excited showing us what they've accumulated in their 529 accounts or in the UTMA accounts for the kids. And we'll have to have a pretty uncomfortable conversation reminding them that unfortunately when it comes to financial decision making, you have to be the top priority. Your financial circumstance has to be above the kids. That's why if you go follow our financial order of operations, or if you go to moneyguide.com/resources and download our free deliverable, saving for college and funding future expenses that you may incur on behalf of your kids comes way late in the financial order of operations after you have your financial footing in place. So that's kind of the first stage, right? We have young kids in the house getting our foundation in place. Well, the second stage where our kids can really impact our wealth actually happens once they get out of the house, once they have flown the nest. Most of us get our kids for 17, 18, 19 years while they're in the house and they go off and they're supposed to get out of the nest. But we have entered into sort of this new era where it's becoming very, very difficult for kids to actually get out of the nest, for kids to actually be gone, actually be out on their own, and that can be devastating to your long-term financial well-being.
So we talked about this in show prep, and I'm actually going to do an audible, and you're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't he do this in the show?"
No, I love it when we do
I
these.
pull
Love it
surprises.
when we do these.
We're about to cover the 7 factors of wealth before you pull them up from the Millionaire Next Door. And guys, I want to tell you, here's how you know this is a big deal, is that 2 of these 7 have to do with adult children and wealth creation. So, but I want to give you 2 stats to give you context on this. The first one is, and listen to this, 47% of parents with adult children gave them $1,000 or more in 2020 to help with bills, debts, and other expenses. That's like half.
So I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, 2020, it was COVID. It was unique time. It was downturn. Okay, maybe this was isolated. 1 in 2, 47%, about 1 in 2 parents with adult children had to help them out because of COVID. Unique time, unique circumstance, unique economy. Maybe that was a fluke. Maybe we'll give a pass on that.
So then we'll go deeper. 56% of parents that make more than $80,000 helped out their adult children financially and gave an average of $8,530. Let me break this down. I don't like to do public math, but I'm even without doing public math, I can tell $8,530 a year out of somebody who makes just over $80,000. That's over 10% is going to the adult children. And it gets worse because they go a little deeper in the fact that money that goes to the adult children, if you ask the parents, was that kind of earmarked? Was that set aside for the adult children? A lot of times it was not. This is, once again, that unconditional love where you see your children struggling, your adult children, and you kind of just go, wow, I got to make sure, I can't stand to see them hurt. I can't stand to see them in pain, so I help them out. The money, they actually asked these parents, what was that money actually allocated for? And listen to this. Of the parents that gave money to their adult children, 33% said they were planning to use it to pay down their own debt.
So I want to rewind that. So instead of firming up their financial footing, instead of getting their debt load down as they age and as they approach retirement, they opted, instead of doing that, to support their adult children who should have been on their own otherwise, okay?
27% were planning to use it for daily living expenses. That means that they had to cut back their lifestyle to make sure they're helping out the adult children. 27% also said they were going to use some of it to build an emergency fund.
So even that, right? Again, if you're following the financial order of operations, you know that a fully funded emergency fund is step 4 in the financial order of operations. Here are parents who haven't even got step 4 figured out, and now they are trying to help out their adult out-of-the-house children.
And then 16% said they were going to use it to save for retirement. So by the way, every one of those goals was pretty healthy and pretty noble for their own financial life, but it shows through that unconditional love they were willing to sacrifice. So now I think it's the right time to kind of show you, because this is worth repeating. Out of the 7 factors that create wealth, according to the Millionaire Next Door, 2 of them fall right into this understanding of how adult children impact wealth building. So let's kind of go through those 7 factors, Bo.
Yeah, so if you look at them, and again, this is from Dr. Stanley's book, here they are. Number 1, they live well below their means. Number 2, they allocate their time, energy, and money efficiently. Number 3, financial independence is more important than displaying high social status. Number 4, their parents, meaning the parents of millionaires, did not provide economic outpatient care, meaning they did not subsidize their lifestyle. Number 5, the millionaires' adult children are economically self-sufficient. So they are not required to provide economic outpatient care to their children. Number 6, they are proficient in targeting market opportunities. And number 7, they chose the right occupation.
So let's look at 4 and 5 really quick. Their parents did not provide economic outpatient care. So let's think about this. The factors that have created wealth for a lot of first-generation millionaires, because that's the majority of millionaires are first generation. They didn't get any help. And I look at this as, if you're going to get strong and exercise and create a strong heart, whatever, whether it's muscles or just creating your exercise and a strong heart, you got to do the work at some point. You got to put the reps in. You got to do the practice. I think this is the problem, and this is why in Dr. Danko and Dr. Stanley's book, they specifically talk about economic outpatient care can actually weaken instead of encourage wealth building for those adult children. And you see that directly with the successful children turn into successful adults who are successful at wealth building. Meanwhile, the ones that are getting all this stimulus from the parents, it doesn't necessarily create strength.
And I think we all have case studies. At least I know, because I grew up from very, very humble beginnings, but I did have friends whose parents had done very, very well. And it was very interesting watching our two upbringings and seeing some of the things that their parents did for them, some of the clothes that they bought them, some of the automobiles that they purchased when they got out of college, when they got to college, out of high school, the places that they rented, the things that they did, the trips that they were able to go on. It was a very different story, but then I'll look at how much emphasis those kids put on building wealth and frugality and making wise financial decisions, and it wasn't the same. They just had a different outlook on that. And so I do think this can be something that if you don't, at some point, you have to, if you've done it well, you have to be able to get the kids off the payroll.
Yeah.
You have to be able to get them out of the house, off the payroll, so that they will be able to self-sustain when you are no longer here to be able to watch after them.
Number 5 was their adult children are economically self-sufficient. We already covered, because like I said, I made the audible where we covered what the parents actually wanted to use that money. But I think, just grouping 4 and 5 together, here's the advice on what I want the financial mutants to do out there is, guys, be very thoughtful on how you're raising your children into adults. Because we talked about first stage was you got to make sure you take care of yourself and your financial stability before you start worrying about the kids' college and so forth. But you will get to that point where you are saving for them, and then they're going to transition from kids to teenagers to young adults. And I would encourage everybody, and we've done content on this, go ahead and start priming the pump of good financial management decisions by your young teenage children by doing matching funds on if they're earning money. Try to encourage them to start the Roth IRAs. Try to encourage them to start funding money into investments so they can see the power of your army of dollar bills. And then I think it's also important when we get to those key life decisions. A lot of kids, they daydream about the 16 or 17-year-old moment when that first car. I've always thought it's good to let them have some skin in the game on that first car purchase. That's what I did with my own daughter. Was I paid for half the car that I matched whatever she had saved up, and that's how we bought her first used car. And it's hard, I got to tell you, because we live in an affluent community. A lot of my neighbors are buying their kids brand new cars, and I get it. As a parent, you're thinking safety first. There's all kind of new features and other things that it's just priceless not to do that. And that's true. I can understand that, but you have to also think about the fact of what is the car that's going to get my child to understand the value of a dollar and not get sidetracked. I mean, this all goes into building that self-sufficient and that economically stable adult child that doesn't need your help.
And here's the truth of the matter. All of us are going to develop some thoughts around money. Every one of us has to develop that at some point. And you've talked about this all the time, Brian. When you first got to college back in the 90s, if somebody just offered you a T-shirt or a bag of chips, you could sign up for a credit card, right? If you don't equip your kids to get into the real world understanding how, this is old school nomenclature, but how to balance a checkbook, how to operate a budget, how to spend less than you make, how to save for the future, how to have an emergency fund. If you don't teach them those tools, then the first things they learn about money may be how to borrow money, how to swipe a credit card, how to take on student loan debt. It's up to us as parents to make sure that our children are prepared for when we're not there looking over their shoulder and they start making those decisions.
Yeah, you don't want them faking it until they make it, because I think that's so much society tells people, hey, go use that bridge of debt and other things. You want to equip your children that turn into adult children of yours that they know, hey, no, I don't want to fake it until I make it. I want to enjoy each phase and have the success that should come and have right expectations of when things should happen, and you can help them on that journey by instilling those skill sets at an earlier age.
So, okay, so we've talked about stage 1 is when the kids are young and in the house, and then stage 2 are when the kids are a little bit older and they're out of the house. Well, stage 3 happens many years later, and it's not having crucial conversations with your adult children as you age. And we see this all the time with clients and prospects where the communication never happens, then it is not set up for a smooth transition of wealth through the generations.
This can play out several different ways. I know people who had great childhoods, but then they find out later, not because of good communication, but because some bad event happens or something that the parents are broke.
Yep.
And then there's other situations where we'll be talking to the adult children who are clients or something, and they'll talk about their parents, and they'll be like, I don't know what they have going on. And that is a very dangerous thing, because it puts, if you're not having those healthy conversations, it puts a big question mark. And we all know, unfortunately, as we get older, we don't always keep all of our faculties about ourselves to where we can manage money well and other things. I just think the transition can be much healthier if you open up communication. What's the first thing they tell you at therapy is make sure you have good communication. And I feel like that is not happening necessarily with intergenerational kind of transitions and discussions on money.
Yeah, and why does this even matter? Why is this important? Well, we do an annual wealth study where we interview a lot of our Money Guy listeners, Money Guy clients, and Ramsey Solutions did a large study asking, do millionaires inherit their wealth? So folks who've been able to build some level of financial success, where did it come from? How did they get there? Well, what's really interesting, 74% of millennials believe that most millionaires inherited their wealth. 52% of baby boomers believe that exact same thing, that most millionaires inherited their wealth. Well, what's the reality? And you look at the population that we interact with on a daily basis, we found that only about 11% of our population who were millionaires inherited over $100,000. About 12% inherited something, but not what they would call material. It was less than $100,000. But a whopping 77% of the millionaires that we interact with and that we talk to are first generation. They did not inherit anything. They built it on their own. And so you might be thinking, oh, that sounds amazing. That's wonderful. That's really positive. Well, there's a downside. There's a negative side to this.
Well, it's one of those things. By the way, this is not just our data. We came in at 77%, but there's multiple sources. It's 80% in one, 85% in another, but there is a disconnect from what the public perceives about wealth creation and what actually happens. But I have covered this, and Bo just alluded to it, is that if you're going to have 80% of the wealth created first generation, that means the churn cycle on wealth must be pretty severe and extreme, and it's true. And we've covered this before, but guys, look at this. 70% of wealthy families lose their fortune by the second generation.
And that's so sad, right? It was almost 80% take a generation to build it, and then 70% of those lose it by the second generation. I'm just thinking about like my kids that I'm like, man, all this hard work that I'm doing, I don't know. It's sort of saddening, especially for first generation builders.
It gets worse, because if you thought 70% was bad, think about the fact that by the time you get to the third generation or the grandchildren, 90% lose their fortune. And once again, the cycle's repeated itself. So that's why this is very much a churn cycle, and it's on you to make sure you're instilling these right decisions and these right skill sets into your children so they don't require the economic outpatient care. But let's kind of talk about also, what does this mean from a communication standpoint of making sure that you're having good open conversations with your parents as you're an adult?
Yeah, because one of the things that is just a sort of a fact of life in terms of the way that our bodies and our brains are built is that an unfortunate truth is that many of us are going to suffer from some form of cognitive decline as we age. We won't be able to make decisions in the same way or quite with the same ability that we once were. And now that life expectancies are expanding, I think we are seeing this more and more, and I think we will continue to see this more and more.
Well, and I want to give a word of caution, because this is the thing. If you just say, hey, I'm just not going to get involved in mom and dad's finances, if they wanted me to know, they would tell me about it. Realize there are, and I hate to sound cynical, but there are industries where there are people that take advantage of older individuals. And I hate that. I mean, because it bothers me. And I'm just going to give you a few experience shares that I've personally helped unwind some of these things and kind of come in at the last minute and hopefully, and I have saved the day on a few of these. But like one, we had somebody who had inherited a bunch of IRA money.
Okay.
Spouse passed away, and IRA money rolled over to the widow. And then they met at a local fast food restaurant. I kid you not making this up. At a local fast food restaurant, somebody who convinced them to buy some equity indexed annuities with an IRA.
Inside of an IRA.
With inside of an IRA that already had a lot of those protections. We fortunately got a hold of this decision before the period that you can look back and unwind it with the insurance company. And they most state laws allow that. But that's a common occurrence. This person that sold this product to this hangs out at this restaurant looking and trolling for these type of situations. And realize the product that was sold had a huge commission. I think it was like 8.5 to 10% commission rate on it. It was not a good deal. I had another client. There's only 3 of these. I'll go through them pretty quick. But I had another client that they had found somebody who saw all the equity they had in their house and had tried to convince them, hey, go refinance. Even though you're older, you're retired, go refinance your house so you can take the proceeds from that home equity.
Were they debt-free when they did?
Yes, they were debt-free.
No mortgage at all.
No mortgage at all, so we can go invest this in the financial markets and take advantage. Now, look, financially, maybe that makes money because there is an arbitrage situation to where historically financial markets do great compared to the low interest rates. But is that something you do on somebody who's in retirement?
And do you ratchet up the risk as you get into retirement? Absolutely not.
There's a disconnect there on the why and where that falls into the wealth building and life cycle of the individual. So pay attention to that. And then the third thing, this is why the communication is so important. We actually had somebody come to us that found out, and I kid you not, their parents had over $200,000 squirreled away in cash in the house, in the curtain rods, in the pockets of their clothes. It was hidden throughout the house. That is a horrible nightmare.
It's scary is what it is.
I asked Daniel, I don't know if this stat exists. I would love to know how much a Salvation Army takes in or Goodwill takes in annually from finding things, jewelry, cash, and other things in coat pockets that are donated after somebody passes away. This is a legit issue that everybody needs to be aware of. And like I said, be very proactive on understanding and having these conversations with your parents as you're an adult so that hopefully there's some good communication and you can transition into how to handle money as we age in a noble and good way.
Now, look, this is very Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People-esque. You want to be sensitive in how you have this conversation. You don't want to say, hey, mom, dad, let me see your balance sheet, and let me start talking about how you ought to transition your money to me. That's not the conversation you want to have. But if you want to make sure that they are protected and they are taken care of, as they age, it makes sense to ask them, hey, mom, dad, have you guys done estate documents? Do you know what's going to happen if something were to happen to you guys? Have you talked about where you want your things to go? Have you talked about how you want that to happen? Have you let the people who will be involved in that know that they will be involved in it? Those are all very mature conversations that we should be having with our parents so that we can all be on the same page. Because one of the worst things that we see is when a child, a parent passes on and the child comes to us and they're like, hey, look, mom, dad, they had it. They were astute. They had it all figured out. But I've got no idea what they have going on because their system was obviously working for them, but I am clueless. And we have to kind of turn into detectives forensically to help them put the pieces together. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of cost, and you lose a lot of efficiency. If you can have those conversations on the front end, you set yourself up so much better long term.